So, good evening once more, and welcome to today's class. Today is going to be a continuation of the CSS class we started on Friday. Yes, my colleague Amos couldn't join me today because he has something to do, so I'll take over for today. I hope my screen is visible, right?
Yes, your screen is visible. I can see
Okay,
your screen.
that's fantastic. Yeah. Okay. So per last week's tutorial, we started off with CSS, what CSS means, and what CSS does for us on our web pages, and the syntax involved with in CSS, and how to make use of some basic selectors using the IDs and all that. Yeah. So we couldn't do much last week Friday, but today I hope we were able to cover more topics because we have to wrap up with CSS and go a bit into JavaScript before we can start with the programming with the frameworks. Yeah. So today we'll be starting with CSS colors. I think we've already gone through colors on when we're treating the HTML bits, yes, but then there were some basics we needed to understand, right? So we realized that when we're dealing with the colors, we most of the time mention either the valid or the predefined colors like the blue, green, yellow, or we mention RGB colors, hex colors, HSL, RGBA, HSLA colors values. So you ask yourself, what is RGB color? Why don't we use our normal predefined colors like the blue, red, green, and all that? So basically in CSS, there are several ways you can get a color being rendered on the page. You can either use the predefined colors or the other type of colors. So we have the first one being the RGB color. So RGB here basically means a combination of red, green, and blue. So these three colors primarily are the primary colors we use to form whichever color you can think of when it comes to your head. If you want to form any color, you have to use these three colors, RGB, which are basically red, green, and blue, right? So for this particular RGB color, it's a combination of these three. So apart from the predefined ones, you can have, let's say, the tomato color, orange, dodge blue, medium sea green, all these violet, yellow, green, all these are predefined basic colors. Apart from this, if you want to um, get any complex color or whatsoever, you can use the RGB formatting to create your color and then work with it. So moving into the RGB section, all these are basic colors you can get. So going to the RGB, as I said, an RGB color value represents red, green, and blue light sources. So RGB value in CSS, a color can be specified as an RGB value using the formula RGB, and then bring your parentheses or your opening your parentheses, and then you bring in the values. So red here could range, it basically ranges from their values we provide to these RGB values. So it ranges from 0 to 255. That's the standard range. You can go as far as any of the colors in the RGB format is concerned. So each parameter, red, green, and blue, defines the intensity of the color between 0 and 255. So given that you want to form, let's say peach, the color peach, right? There are values you can set for each individual RGB value that in the end you come and get the peach color you wanted to form. So basically that's how the flow goes. So for instance, so since this is an RGB color, for red, it goes from 0 to 255. Same for green, from 0 to 255. So meaning for the red part, for the red parameter, if you start with 0, it means the color you're trying to form will have no red. That's the basic idea. And then if you specify 255, it means the color you're trying to form has full red in it. It has every bit of red you can think of in that particular color. The same goes for green. It also starts from 0 to 255. So if you start with 0 for the color, it means it has no green in it. And vice versa, if you start with 255, it means it has every green you can think of in it. So let's say an example of an RGB color. So we can have this, right? As you can see here, there are sliders to help us see exactly what you're talking about. So if I want to form a color red, I can go to 255 for the first one, and then for the green I can come 0, and then for the blue too I can come 0. So this basically gives me pure red. But once I start increasing the green compartment, then the color begins to change, because it's basically you mixing the color. So here I have a color red, let's say one cup of red and then 1 cup of green, and then between these two cups I've mixed all the red I have, and then I've made, let's say, 60% of the green. So this is the color I'll get. And then there's no blue. If I'm to introduce a bit of blue in it, then the overall color changes. So that's a basic concept of mixing colors and then coming out a derived color using the RGB format. So an example here, you could see this color which is red has all the 255 value for the red compartment. It has 0 for the green compartment, and it has 0 for the blue. So the same thing goes for the blue as well. So it has 00255, and then here are mixtures of all the three for you to get different colors and all that. So apart from the predefined colors, you can use RGB color formatting to create different variety of colors for you to use on your web pages. Yeah, so that's one type of color we can use in CSS, the RGB format. Now we also have RGBA format. So this format, as you can see, it looks close to the RGB format, but then it has an A added to it, and this A here basically means opacity. When you talk of opacity, how light the overall color is or how deep the overall color is, you can think of diluting your color. So after you've mixed your color, you want to dilute it. I mean, if you have a cup full of color and you continue adding a lot of water, at the point you get something that looks like water. Imagine putting a color in a river or in a very big basin of water. You probably not notice the color being included because the water quantity becomes a lot. So that's the whole idea about adding the A bit. That's the opacity bit to the RGBA formatting. So if, let's say, you are dealing with colors and you want some of the colors to be transparent, you can use this type of color, and then you can add the opacity to reduce the intensity of the color or to make it very, very, very standard as the color goes here. So for this A, it's basically, it ranges from 0 to 1. Yeah, it ranges from 0 to 1, and then the 0 is when it's very, very light. That's when you've actually removed all the color, or you fully diluted the color. And then when it goes to 1, then it basically means you've actually restored the color back to what it used to be. Yeah, so we can see some examples here. So here we can, let's do a red color formation here. So we remove green, we remove blue, and then we dilute the whole color. So here we don't see anything. The color basically becomes a transparent color. But then once we increase the opacity, that's the A compartment of the color, then you can see that we've restored the color back to its original color. Yeah, so those are some of the uses. These are some of the use cases of using the RGBA compartment, the RGBA type of colors. I mean, you can use to make transparent backgrounds or transparent colors. If you want to apply, let's say, a very thin background color on something, you don't want to fully hide what's behind it, you can use this color type to do what you want to do. Yeah, so as we can see, this is a full-fledged color, but then per what comes before it has been diluted in a way. So per this color, it has the 0, this part here giving us 0, and then the next one has 0.2. it ranges, as I said, it ranges from 0 to 1. So let's say it's 100% rating here. So if you want 10%, you basically give it a 0.1. If you want 20%, you give it 0.2, as it's been done here. If you want 40%, you do 0.4, then it goes 60%, 80%, and then for full color restoring, you just give it a 1, and then that's it. So that's it about the hex colors we have in CSS. Now, going on to the next color type, we have hex colors. Now, a hexadecimal color is specified with hash. There's always a hash in front of it, and then it has 6-digit values. Sometimes it ranges between 6 and 3, but then there's a reason for when you can use a 3 instead of the full 6. But then primarily a hex value needs to have 6 digits with the hash symbol coming in front, right? So here's a description of it. So anytime you see any color that has a hash and then some value, random numbers, you should know that this is where it's originating from. It could be numbers, it could be alphabets. Yes, and then the numbers range from 0 to, of course, 9. Then the alphabet ranges from A to F. So this is how it goes. The first two are still the same red compartment. So as you can see, even though this is a different type of color, we are still making reference to the red. So meaning that for formation of colors, you can't really form colors and then do away with red, the color red, blue, green and blue. You always need to include them in your color formation. So here it has two versions of the red. So it takes the red 2 times, it takes the green color compartment 2 times, and then it takes the blue compartment 2 times. So this is the syntax for the hex color formation. So where the double R represents red, double J represents green, and double B represents blue. This is basically how the hex values are formed. So and then, as I said, they all ranges from, so for every value you see, for every R that you see, it ranges from either 0 to 9 or from A to F. Those are the ranges. So you can come down here and see what the description says. So where our JJ and BB value are hexadecimal values between 00 and FF. So every letter ranges from either 0 or F. It ranges from either 0, it starts from either 0 or it starts from A and it goes all the way to F, or for the numbers, it goes all the way to 9 or where it has to go. So here's an example of how a hex value looks like. So here we are dealing with hash FF6347. So here per the syntax we saw up there, the first two represent the red compartment in this overall color. And as you can see, this color looks very red because all the red compartment came in full. If you see F in hex value, it means that's the length, that's the maximum you can go for one particular color compartment. In this case, this is red. So if you have 3 cups of red, green and blue, the red cup was used entirely. We poured the whole red into our mixture. Do you get it? And then for the green compartment, we had 6 and 3 for the individual compartments. So for our green bottle, we poured 6, not 6%, but then we didn't pour all. We only poured a percentage that is equivalent to 6 per the range it can go. Remember, it's moving from 00 to 255. So that's what you should also get to know, right? And then so we had 63 for this. It's moving from 0 to 255, and then for the blue value to the same thing, we only had 47 of the entire 255. So this is the color we came up with. So this is basically we mixing colors and then making use of the color values on our HTML pages and all that. So these are examples of some hex colors we can use. So a combination of these three would probably give you something that looks like black. If you want a pure black, as you know, if you want a pure black, you always have to start with 00. So it means a pure black would be 000000, because those are the list of color mixing we can supply to any of the color arrangements. Sorry. Any questions so far?
Not really.
Okay. Good. Stella, any questions so far? Stella. Okay. She's mute. Okay, so let's go on. So yeah, so that's it. And then I told you about some special cases where we use 3 digits instead of the full 6. Remember, I said it had 6 values in a full. Yes, there are 6 values in a full hex color, but sometimes you can limit it to 3, and there's a reason. So here's a reason. The reason here basically means if you have a color that has the same color matching for the same color combination. So for instance, if I have FF0066, because the FF, which both represent red, are the same value, which is F, I can choose to represent only one F. If I have 66, which represents green, for the 2 compartments of green, because they are both 66, I can just choose one. I can summarize it and just take one of the values. And same goes for the last one, the blue. If I have, let's say, 00, and then they are both representing blue, instead of me writing the 200, it's better off me writing just 10. So in all this, you would come to a 3-digit hex code instead of the full 6. So basically, that's when you probably need to, you can choose to write 3 hex code value for colors instead of the full 6. So for instance, the background body of, let's say, a normal web page could be FC9 instead of the full 6. So if you had to expand this, we would have gotten FFCC99. But since these are both the same, the first 2 are the same for red, the second 2 are the same for green, and the last 2 are the same for blue, why don't we just summarize it into just FC and FC9, just to give us what's, and it will give us the same color basically. So that's it for the 3-digit hex value. So anytime you see 3-digit hex value, don't be confused. Just know that it has been summarized because basically their color combination were the same for the different colors they had. It was basically the same. All right. So the next color type we can come across is HSL, which is hue, saturated, and lightening. So I think I'm sure we all have apps on our phone that sometimes you take a picture and you want to adjust some settings, some brightness and all that for the color to look nice, or probably to damage the picture if what you're trying to do didn't come across very well. So basically that's what we are doing here too. So for this type of color combination, we are basically manipulating the hue aspect of a color, we are manipulating the saturation, and we are manipulating the lightening. This is another way to come up with colors, because if you manipulate these parameters, you can always come up with a different color, and then it will also be a valid color for you to use. So in CSS, a color can be specified using the hue, saturation, and lightening, HSL, in the form hue, saturation, lightening, and always pay attention to the syntax. Remember that when we did the RGB, it was also the same syntax, but then this time around, we were just targeting the RGB, that's the red, green, and the blue compartments of the color. But this time around, we are doing HSL, which is a bit different from what we did for the RGB. Yeah. So here it also goes. It has a different syntax. So the hue is a degree of the color hue from 0 to 360. So And then here there's something worth to note here. The hue part of the color combination goes from 0 to 360. However, from 0 to 120 is where the red ranges goes for. So out of the entire 360, if you give a value more than 120, then it means you've entered the blue compartment. You've entered the green compartment, sorry. So 0 is red, 120 is green, and then 240 is blue. So from 0 to 120, or from 0 to 119, you are in the red compartment. So for example, there's a hue bit. So if I give my color from 0 up to, let me turn off saturation here and then here. Let's see something. Okay, because this already has a saturation and lightening part, it would still not give us the red compartment we want with this. But however, that's the same task. So once you move your value from 0 to before 120, you are in the red compartment just for the hue. This has not, we've not yet gotten to the saturation and the lightening. So from 0 to 119, you're in the red. Once you go any value beyond 120, then we are in the green compartment. And then same follows for when you get to 240, from 240 up to 360, then any value you specify in the hue it gives you a blue color for your combination. Saturation on the other side, that's the second parameter, is a percentage value. So 0 means shade of gray. So if you don't want shade of gray and you start moving your cursor on the saturation, it moves from shade of gray to the full color. And the full color is being specified by what you have in your hue. So this will just give you a saturation of the color you have. So whatever color you have at every point, this will probably give it a shade. So the more you move the cursor up and around, then the shade applies to it. And the same go for lightening. As the name suggests, it's lightening. So the higher the value, the lighter the color is, basically. So if I increase all the lightening, you can see that we have a transparent color. So if the lightning value is less, then it's basically giving you a black value. So if you want a neutral, if you want to see the color you have, you probably should put it in 50%. Here it's neither light or it's neither dark. So once you put it in 50%, let me do this, yes. And then it means now we are showing you the color you basically have. So let's also turn off. Let's go to 100% here. Right, now let's see this. So here this is the most red we can get. As we start moving the cursor towards a value towards 120, then you're moving from red to green. This is the most red you can get. And then to 120, this is the most green you can also get. So once you decrease the value from 120, then it means you're moving towards blue. So if you move it to the end, you get the most blue, right? No, not 0. I think the slider has an issue. So 360. Okay, it goes back to, okay, so blue. So 240 is the most blue you can get. So once you move it to 0, that means you're going back to where we started, which is red. So I think it makes sense. So 240 is the most blue you can get. And then once you move towards or above 240, then you're going back to 0, which is the most red. And the rest starts from 0. You move from 0 to the most green, from most green to the most blue, and then from most blue to back to the most red again. So I think basically, because 360 is most of the time, I mean, it's a circle. You go back to 360, then you start over again from 0, you go back. So that's where the whole idea comes from. So yeah, these are some of the colors we can be playing with in CSS, and then we can use them to style our web pages and all that. I just want you to get an understanding so that once you see any color whilst you are working, you don't get confused. You know what the color means and how to give it, how to also use it as you want in your work. Any questions so far?
Yeah, I'm following.
Okay, Stella, how about you? Any questions on the colors? Any questions on the colors? Okay, silence means consent, so let's move on. All right, so I think let's get some work going. Let me see. Let's give blue some nice color. So our style sheet is still here. What we did last time out, we can still continue with it. So I'm trying to target the body and then give it a background. We'll come to background colors, but then for now, let's see how to use the different colors we've learned. So RGB, which is red, blue, and red, green, and blue, which moves from 0 to 255. So if we want, let's say, a blue background, we know that we can basically give the red 0, then comma, then the green, we also give it 0. And then for blue, we give it a full 255, right? Once we do this, we give it a height and a VH. Once we do this, we should know that we are basically styling our background color blue. So the same thing goes. So now if you want to give it a red background, it's the same thing. So we revert this back to 0, and then for the red part of the RGBA, we move the full 255. Sorry. If you go more than 255, I think you get an issue. It shouldn't work. Let me see. Okay, I think it goes beyond its let me see, 321. Let me see. So I think it still moves around it, but then that's the full. The syntax here is to just use the 255, and then that's it. If you want any color, you come down. So this is for the red. Now, if we want, let's say we can mix it up. Let's say this, we give this 100, we give this 50, then we give this 120. They're basically mixing it. So now we get this color, which is a shade closer to the blue region or so. Yeah. So that's it with the RGB. Now remember, we also have a different type. We had the other type with the A. That's the opacity version. So for the opacity, once you bring the A as part of the name of the color coding, you make sure you also bring another parameter, which is a comma here, from starting from 0.00. This can only move from 0.00 to 1.0. Sorry, 1.0. 1.0 basically means you want to maintain the base color, which is this color we did initially. But then if you go to 0.00, it means you are diluting the whole color. So everything becomes transparent. That's the whole idea. Now, VS Code has some intelligence here. So if you hover on this color, the RGB color, you can actually do some manual movements here. So here's the A bit, the opacity bit on the RGBA. So you can move it back to the color, and you can see the rendered color up here. So VS Code is quite intelligent enough to give us this view before we even hover off. And then whatever you do here, you save it and then it reflects. So now if I want to move into the any region, that's for the main color, I can use this slider here, and then I can move between the yellow, the red, and then move to the blue, and then move back to the red region. So this is very cool if you don't like typing plenty and you just want to move and slide this up and down. Yeah, so let's see. Let's move our thing up here and then move this. Okay, RGB. There's no A here, so we are still working in the RGB. So let's add the A compartment, which is 0.5. Yeah, so full color, and then this. Right. Oh, what is this guy doing? Okay, let's just bring this here and just add opacity here. Sorry. So comma 0.5. Yeah, so there's it. So once we refresh, we get a color here. So this is for the RGB, and then RGB. And now for the HSL, that's the hue, saturation, and lightening. It's also the same thing here. So now remember, if it's the basic one, so for the HSL, there's no A as part of it for the basic use. So you don't need to bring this fourth parameter here. So you just move this guy out of the way, and then you have these three. So we have for the hue, we have for the saturated, and we have for the lightening. But remember, these ones are percentages, right? This one is a percentage, so you probably need to bring your percent here. Here too, you need to bring your percent here. It's only the hue part that you need a full color. So here we can go, let's say 100% for this as well. And then for the actual hue, the hue gives the color for the HSL version, but then the S and the L basically gives it saturation and lightening. They are not really colors. The actual color is on the first parameter. So if you're able to manipulate the value you want there, well, then you can get the color. And then these guys basically give you some saturation, which in the end will turn into a different color. So we can go down here to, let's say 10. So that's the actual color. You know, from 0 upwards, the most red you can get is when you're on 0, right? And then the most green you can get when you're on 120. That's when you get the most green. And then when you are the most blue you can get is 240. 40. Then you can get your most blue. So once you move from these regions, it means you are moving into a different color, and then you apply your saturation and your lightening to it as well. Any questions so far? So we can move into the next session. So that's it about basic colors in CSS. So once you see these colors, don't be scared. It's just a manipulation game. You basically need to understand what you are moving and how you are manipulating the saturation and the lightening values. And then if it has an A compartment, the HSLA, then you mean for the last one is just a matter of transparency. So if you how transparent the color goes for, then you manipulate it like that. Okay, so now that's it for the colors. So moving straight into the backgrounds. So I'm sure we've been working or we've been seeing nice web pages with some nice background. Example with, like, for example, with what we are seeing now, the text are displaying on top of a very nice background. So you would ask yourself, how did we get the background and all that? So in CSS, if you want to set a background color on an element or anything, you basically use the background CSS property. That's a shortened version. So if you want to set background color, you want to set the position of the background color, you want to set the size of the background color, there are individual properties you can use. But then if you don't want to use the shorthand, that's when you use the individual properties. So you can set a background color, you can set a background image, you can set a background repeat, so that if the image you use isn't as big or as wide as the element you used it around it, it can repeat so that it fills the entire thing. So we'll get into that example. So let's go into our code base, and then for the body, let's remove everything from here. Let's remove everything from here, and then basically let's set a background to our body. So now for our background, let's set a background image. So for the background image too, it has it's more of like a function, right? So once you call background image, you always expect a URL function to be called. So something like this. So once you call the URL, then you put in the value of the image you are trying to load on the element you are trying to style. Here we are targeting the body. So we want to put a nice background in the body. I have this nice background. Let me see where I can get it and then put it on it here. Images. Images, then we can put our images here. Right, and let's go back into our code. So I want to specify one of the images I just put in here. So if I what I taught you about the VS Code path, specifying the path. So now I want to specify the image component. So I do a /, then I go into the component folder. Then I can use any of these images. So let me use the first one, image 1, and let's see what we get. So this is the first background image I set. Now, as I told you, this image is a very small image, right? And I was trying to put it on this very big background. I set the background to be the height of the current screen, which is 100 VH. That's your current screen height. It's a property, CSS property that we will look into, but basically it sets whatever height you have on your current page to be the height of where you're applying it. So if you're applying it on any element at all and you specify the word VH, it will basically it will copy the height of your current screen and then apply it as the height of that particular element. So given a height of 100 VH for our body, right, we are setting a background image of this small image on it. And then we didn't specify that if it sets a background image and then the image is too small, we didn't specify what to do. So by default, CSS will repeat all the images till it covers the entire background. There's a default behavior with background images. However, if you don't want this behavior and you just want to set one background, you want the background to fill the entire space, there are CSS properties you can apply, right? So we can look at some of them. But I think let's try other images and see. I think there's a 2. Let's try 2. And then this one, this is also very small. Okay, there's a hand up. Who is it? Emmanuel. Yeah, you can speak. Emmanuel.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you were entering the URL for the picture, I saw that you placed it in parentheses.
Yes.
And you had to bring, okay.
Oh yeah, complete your question.
And you brought a dot before the /. But when I was doing my script, I didn't do any of that. I just did /, then the address of the image, and it came.
Okay, so it's from where you specify the CSS from. So this CSS is a different file, and it's in the same folder as programming class with the images. So if I'm moving from CSS file and I want to access something in images, I would have to bring a dot. This dot basically means that I'm trying to go out of my current file, but then let me stay in the current directory. So the current directory here is the programming class. If I want to move out of this file and there are specified things in this directory, which is the programming language directory, I bring one dot. If I had brought 2 dots, it would have mean that I want to go out of this parent folder. So this programming class, then I want to access something outside of the programming class. That's how we specify routes and then paths in CSS. I think it basically applies to all files. The JavaScript is almost the same thing. If you want to go out of a file or a folder, it's 2 things: a file and a folder. Going out of a file is just 1 dot and a slash. Going out of a folder is double dot and a slash. Then you go out of the folder, then you can target any file you want to target. I hope I'm clear.
Yes, miss. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. So now the background has been repeated multiple times to just fill the entire body, but we don't want this. So that's when we have the other CSS properties, background properties. So we have background color. You've already seen it. We just did background image. Now there's a background repeat. So here repeat only has 2 values. So we can see VS Code is sensible enough to give us suggest something for us. So if we do background repeat, you can see that we have repeat, which is the default behavior. Then we have repeat X. So repeat the colors, the background on the X axis, but then on the Y axis, don't repeat it. That's another way. Or repeat all the background on the Y axis, but on the X axis, don't repeat. Or don't repeat at all. No repeat. So this is the behavior we mostly use if we don't want to repeat the background images on the elements we apply them on. So if we save this and we come here, we should only see one background image here. Now there's still an issue because the thing is very small. The size of the screen is very big. This is a normal laptop with, I think, 1366 pixels by 768 pixels. So it's a very big, it's a very wide laptop screen. However, this image size is very small. We can inspect it and see what the actual size is. So if we come here, we see the image size here is 326 by 3263 by 320 pixels. So that's a very small section on the screen. But then we want it to fill the entire page. So we should still have a way to do that. So that's where we have background covers. So there's a property called background cover. What's it? Background origin. Yeah, background origin. No. Background size. Sorry, background size. So we want to specify the size of the background we just set. So here you can tell CSS that this, even though this image is small, I want it to fill the entire page, or I want it to fill just the space it can fill, and it should leave the rest empty. I think that's the default behavior. If it's very small and you don't specify any background size, it will only render to the background size. That's when you specify the background repeat to be no repeats. So if you want it to fill just the size, that's the auto or the contain. However, if you want it to fill everything, that's when you use the cover. So cover will fill the entire element size that you are trying to put the background image on. So if you save and you go to our page, you should see that the image has been pixelated. It has been stretched to fill the entire page. So most of the time, this doesn't really look cool if the image dimension or the image resolution is very small. So you should always know what background image to use on the space, the given space. If you're trying to use on the entire website, then it means the image should be very big. Or you're trying to use on just the landing page, the first screen the person sees, then you should know that the image size should also stretch and it should be big enough to accommodate something like that. So we can have another example where I think there are some of the images that are really huge and can do the work for us. Let me see. Let's use 5 here, and then let's see what comes of it to see if it will fill the entire page. Is this correct? 5 is PNG, yes, not JPG. And also be mindful of the image extension. It might waste your whole day if you don't get it correct. So this is for the image 5. The image size, as you can see, is a very big image. Even though we didn't specify any background size, it had already covered the entire screen. So with this tool, this is obviously not cool. This is not what we want. So we can still use the background size to specify that no, just contain it. So containing means that even if it's big, contain it to the size of the given element you're trying to apply the background. So we can use contain to fix this, and then voila, it contains it. Even though there are some spaces here, at least this is the dimension that the page can show the full background size, and then based on this you can work with it or not. So I think images, you should always be peculiar about the image resolution. That's the width to the height ratio, because if it's not rectangular, then you are trying to place it on a rectangular space, then it would always give you this feedback where you can have some or majority of the image showing at the background, and then a bit of it is cut off because the resolution of the screen and the resolution of the picture do not match. You can't obviously put a rectangular, you can't put a square image on a rectangular space. Obviously, it would only show you the rectangle and the square bit of the image, and then it will leave out the other part off. So basically, that's the whole concept. So if you have a rectangular space and you're trying to put a background image, you should make sure that the picture you're using is also a rectangular-like resolution. I hope I'm making sense.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so that's it. So we can specify these little background sizes, and then we move ahead. There's also a position, background position. So now with this current view, we realize that the thing is on the left hand side. There are more space here, even though we don't want to, we can stretch it, we can let it fill it, but then obviously we are not going to get the desired. So contain, we can have auto. The auto fills the entire page, but obviously it's going to fill everything correctly. There's no stretch, but then some of the images size will be cut off. It's either this or there's always the trade-off. You can, if the dimensions of the image is not equal to the dimensions of your elements, there's always going to be a trade-off. You have to sacrifice something. Either you are sacrificing some bits of the image, the background image, or you are only covering just a part of the image. However, you can use background positions to make it a bit better. So let's use background positioning. Let's see. So if we come here, position, we can have it at the bottom of the page, the center. Let's do center first, and then let's remove the size. So let's do with we can do contain. Let's contain it in the middle. So this let's contain this, yeah, and now we put the position in the middle. So you can see now we have spacing on the left side and the right hand side, but then the image is in the middle. However, we still don't want this, so let's see what we can do. So if we don't want center, we can put it at the bottom, we can put it on the left, or we can put it on the right. But I think in this case, our best solution would be to not contain this, but to cover this. It should cover the entire space, because we were not lucky to have a good background image for our homepage. So I think that's it. So now, if you don't want to be doing this little property and their value, you can just use a background shorthand. So even for most of the time, many developers they use the background just for applying background color. So in the you can just do, for you to do background color, there are a lot of times where you just do background and then you specify the color blue, then automatically, or let's do a different color, gray, then automatically CSS would take this as a shorthand, and then it will apply gray to the entire space for you. But if you inspect this gray color, you know that there are a whole lot of properties that were given out their default values. So for instance, the background image was set to initial, the background position X was set to initial, same as the background position Y. The size was set to initial. Because we didn't provide value for the background property we used, we only provided color. So we only took the color bit, and then for the rest, it slapped the initial values to them, which is basically like the default values. So it's the same thing with the other properties too. So if you want to set the background image, the repeat, and all that, you can do all in a go. So I can set my background to gray, and then I can set my URL to the color I have here. So dot image and then bj5. Then I can specify no repeat, and then a space, and then I specify the size. So I want it to contain okay, so I think this is initial. Let's see this. Yeah, so we can do this and cover, but it was contain. Yeah, contain. Yep. And now if you save this and you come here, let's see, background gray. Okay, I think there's something we missed. Let's remove this and then bring this here. Now, yeah, so we have this here. So we added the background color, the background URL, and then also added the background repeat property to all in a single go for it to give us the desired output we like. And of course, the colors, we know, we've already learned about it, so we can splash any background color, whether using the normal color names or the hex values or the RGB values. You can do everything you want. So that's how it works. So with this, you should be able to set background images, these fancy images you see on websites. You can also apply the same thing to your background, and then based on the background, you can put in some nice documents and then make your work look nice. Any questions so far with the colors and the background that we've learned?
No, I think I'm cool.
Okay, Stella, you're not talking that much. Is it that you're okay or you're just fine with this? You're fine. Hello, is someone trying
Hello.
to talk? Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, we just realized that.
Mhm.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes, I realized that when we were.
Your line is breaking. Can you position yourself well or something?
When we were doing what? Yes. Okay. Have a good network. That's why I'm saying if you want to insert multiple images instead of using one, whereas in the example we are using one image.
One
So if you
image.
want to
Yeah.
use multiple images, what what do you do?
Yeah, that's a very good one. So inserting multiple images as a background is just a way, it's just same thing as applying multiple. So let me come to that in a real quick. Hold on. Um, uh, okay, yeah. So let's go right into it. So okay, so now if you want to insert multiple images into the URL, right? Sometimes let's see. So we can do let me see. Let me see if we can get URL. It's something I have not really tried, but then let's see. We can always go here and then inquire about it. Because usually it's for a background, if you insert multiple images, then are you trying to put one before the other? You could always separate them with URLs. So something like this. Do you get it? Hello. So let's do this. Um, so URL. So let's insert the first one here.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, this thing. So let's insert the two. And then let's see what becomes of our page. There's a way to do this. Let me see. It's possible. So this is the example we have here. So URL and then comma, then the page and the URL. So here we just do this. then come here. Okay, this two is not even a valid. Yes, so let's take all this, and then the URL. So 2 BP. So 2 is JPG, and then 5 is PNG. Right, let's save this as C. What we get here. Yeah, so this is we inserting 2. So now there's no repeat for only the first one, but then there's no repeats for the second. So if you want the second to also have no repeats, it's the same thing, no repeats. So I think the second image is down there. So let me do something here. This is taken. So let's set the size. Let's set a size for this. Let's say 50%. Okay, the size comes here. Center contain. Let me do this here. 10. So after the 50% here, let me do this to also 50%. I want to see both URL images. I think one is behind the other, so that's why. So, but basically, you can add both images or multiple images just by separating them with a comma. So, because we are using the background, the shorthand, your first line of background comes, and then you separate the whole thing with a comma. Then you repeat it again with a different values for the URLs and then for the background colors. I hope it works. Hello, Emmanuel. Is it Emmanuel?
No, I think it's Peter that asked that question.
Peter, yeah, Peter. Okay, I think he's mute. So yeah, let's go ahead. Yeah, so that's it for it. So there are more examples, and there are more examples you can play with. There's the MDN web doc. So here you can get every explanation you want on this. There are so many of these properties that you probably might not use for a very long time, because in your day-to-day work, it might not probably come up that's important or that useful. So if you want, or I mean, it's a doc, so it has every bit of use case you can ever think of. So apart from the W3 schools, you can also make use of the MDN for web stuff. Yeah. All right, so enough of the background stuff. So let's move on to the next session. So I think we're okay here. We've known how to combine the different properties and then come up with nice background colors. And then there's one thing I think we didn't talk about is background attachments. It basically specifies how to deal with the background image, whether it should scroll once you also scroll your stuff, or it should be fixed. So if you want something like a parallax scrolling effect where the content of the background, I mean the page scrolls all right, but the background is fixed, so that you can feel like there's a fixed background and the contents are scrolling on top. That's something what we call parallax. You can also do that using this background flex, background attachment, sorry. So you can apply background attachment to this, and then you basically have the background static, but this requires that you have some body, some info here. So p lorem, if you have multiple lorems on your page, these are too small, so let's give it a p font size 50 px, and then the color is white. Yeah, so let me try and multiply this. So you realize that the background image is not moving, it's fixed. So that's what we mean by the background attachment fixed. So you can have the background fixed while your items on the page scrolls on top of each other. All right. Yeah. So let's quickly move to the next session. We've talked about the background shorthand. That's what we did. There are some examples here. Set the background of the H1 tag to light blue. So I think you should know what to do here. You can play with all these and understand their individual use cases. There are quite a lot. If we decide to delve into them one by one, we might not finish our class today on time. Okay, so moving to CSS borders. So border, as you know, basically puts a border around your elements when you feel the need to do so. So usually on tables, you would see a bordered table with their cells all around some four square rectangular lines called border. So CSS border property allows you to specify the style, width, and color of an elements border. So as you can see, I have a border with it's a bordered paragraph with all the size, and then here we have a border only at the bottom. Here we have all border, but then the edges are rounded, and then here we have only one border on the left, but then the width of the border is very thick. So if you see something like this, you know that you basically need to border the elements and then increase the thickness of the border width. So CSS border styles. So the basic syntax for CSS border is setting the width, that's the border width, border style, and then the border color. So that's the main thing that comes to mind or that you need to do when you think about CSS border. So let's put it into an example where we have this P, and we basically want to border this. So if we come here, we can put this in the border. So border, and then we specify the width first. So 1px, that's the very basic width you can apply to a border, and then you specify the border style. So solid, there can be, remember there's no liquid here, there are specific values you can supply. So there's a solid, there's a dashed, I think there's dotted, and then there is there are quite a few number of styles you can apply, but the basic one is obviously solid. Solid means a solid line, and then you can supply your color. So any color you think of, you can use the hex color format, or you can use the RGB color format, or the HSL format as well. So here, most often than not, you might probably be tempted to use a hex because that's a very easy one. So supply some 6 values or 3 values based on the values at hand. So if you want to color it, let's say a black color, so you can do black. As you know, you can either tap the normal black normal color or use the hex, which is hash, and then you do a 000, 6 zeros. But because it's a 60 and you know that it's in a region of red, green, and blue, and they all have the same value, you can shorten this to just 3 zeros. It's the same thing if I had wanted to specify the color to be white, and I do white is FFF. That's white color. VS Code is smart enough to give you the preview of the color here. But once you get the color and you know that it's the same color for all the 3 compartments, you can shorten it to 3. So that's one thing you should keep in mind. So because you have a background white, let me give this a black border so that it looks nice. At least it looks visible. Sorry. Yeah. So you give it a background border color black, and then you save it, and then basically let me see what's happening. Okay, this is too much. So onto yeah. So let me color this black. So this is our paragraph that has been bordered on all sides, right? Yeah. So this basic border. Now, if you want to border the bottom, there are ways you call it. So for this, you know that you're only specifying the border bottom width. You are not thinking of the border top, border left, border right, and all that. So Going into it, we first off start with the border style. So as I said, there are different type of border styles you can come across. The basic one is a solid, but then there's dotted, there's dashed, there's double, there's groove, and all this. Most of the time we don't use this. I think the worst case scenario is when you use a dash, probably just to show, just to pinpoint a section on the page and give it more attention. But then most of the times, if you want to use border, it's mostly solid borders where there's no break in the line. So for example, if you specify border for all these border p dotted, this is a class that has been called in the p paragraph, the p tag, sorry, and then the border style has been specified to be dotted. So with what we did here, this is the shorthand for specifying the border with border width, border style, and then border color. But then you can also specify them individually. So I could have just specified the border width first to be, let's say, 5px, a very big border width, and then the border style I can specify something else. So here I can specify dotted, and then you can save it, and then we see how it looks like. So this is how it looks like. And now I can yeah, so basically that's it with the border weight. So you can play around with these different type of border weight. There's even a double border weight. I mean, everything here depends on how creative or how important you feel the need to apply a border. There are obviously no border. If you don't want to apply any border, there CSS. There's a CSS syntax for that. So you just apply border style none, and then every border will be removed. Sometimes there might be a code that you'll be required to do some manipulation. They probably apply the border, and if you want to take out the border, you can apply this CSS styles to which remove this fancy stuff. Yeah, so I think the next section basically talks about the border width. So as I did here, I have separated the different varieties, the different size of the border stuff. So I can separate the border width. I can style it separately from the border style, and even also separate the border and color. So border color can also be something different. Let's say hash 234. I don't know what that will give me though. Yeah, so this is 3 hash code. So basically, if you want to extend it, I'm sure you should know this now, that the first one is a repeat of itself, same as the second, and the same as the third. So this can be shortened into this 3 digits. Yeah, we can specify this as the color, and then the color will reflect to this. We can move from here to, let's say, double, and then we should have the double being applied here. Yeah, so that's it with the CSS borders. I think there are quite a few times where you'll be required to be using borders, especially for some section, let's say the heading section or something. If you want to apply a border bottom, you can easily do that. Yeah, so yeah, so that's it about it. Any questions so far? Are there any things you'd want me to share any light on with respect to the borders?
Yeah, my hand is up. Hand up.
Oh, sorry. Usually I'm on the code VS Code side, so I don't see.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you see, if you write a text and the text doesn't cover the entire page, and you want the border to just surround only the text, is there a line you can add, like your screen here? You see, if you want the border to just end at a dot and not cover the entire page.
Yeah. Okay. So with that, yeah, it's very possible, but then you should know. Sorry, guys. You should know the document you are working with, right? So this particular document, this particular element I'm working with, it has a border box. What's this? Yep. So you can inspect this guy and see that this guy is taking the border will always be applied to the entire elements. So it's up to you to know how long the element is and how you can control the width. I'm sure you are worried about the width, right? Hello.
Yes, the width.
Yes, yes. So in this case, the width is 100%, or it inherits the parent width. So if you want to specify the border just to cover the actual document, then you should also make sure that the document width is not more than what you have here. So now you have width, let's say, let me do, so width here should be, let's say, 50% of the parents. So if you see 50% of the parent, now from here to here is actually, yes, a width of the document. So the border has no choice than to go around the entire width of the document you are trying to apply to. Yes, so these are some of the things you can do to specify here. So for border, it applies to the element in question. And if the element's width is more or is very wide, it has no option than to apply it on everything. However, there are a few tweaks you can do, but then this is the default behavior. You can't really do much unless you go dig dive and you tweak the width a bit, and then you can have the border applying to it nicely as you wish. Okay, good. All right. So yes, so let's look at how to specify only some size of the border. Now we've been applying the border to the entire element. Now we can specify just some part of the border, some part, either the bottom or the top or the left or right. So in doing that, it's quite straightforward. So border width. Now border width, if you specify border width, is for the whole 4 sides. So if you look at the computed of this, it's border width left, border width right, border width top, border width bottom. So you can see that here. Let's see. So this border width here, if you drop this guy down, you can see that it's border width, border top width, border right width, all have been computed with the summarized value you give. However, if you want to separate them individually, then you can target them individually like this. So now let's target the border top alone. So instead of the full border width, we can do border top width, and then you can specify our value, which is 5tx. So once we specify this, let me see, border top down. Okay. Let me slash this important. Okay, so what's happening? Let me see. Okay, so let's specify the border width 0, and then specify the border top to be this. Let's see. Yes, so it looks like the other sides, they have a default value. If you don't remove that default value, it will still apply the border to it. So you can first of all, this is a trick. There are a few tricks you should probably get, as you go ahead. There are a few tricks you have to know. So realize the border would always apply to all the sides. You have to explicitly remove them. So you can use the border width to set all the border width to be 0. Then you can come ahead and set your border width, top width, to be what you want. So once you do that, we can also do the bottom here, and then it should also work for us. Now it comes down. So that's one of the few things you can take notes of for setting the border width for the different sizes. So I think that was the next section here. Yeah, so border size, border style, we've done all this, double slash and all that. Yeah. Any questions so far? I think we can do the border rounded, and then we can summarize, we can wrap up with this border but CSS borders. Yeah. So for the rounded, is basically a different a different CSS property we usually use. That's the border radius. So for border radius, as the name suggests, it gives radius on the edges of your border, and it can only be used for an element that you've added border to. If you don't add any border to an element, you can't set a radius on the border radius or the edges because there's no border. So if you want rounded edges on your borders, or sometimes you can also add border radius to let's say buttons, or I think button, you can add border radius to button just to make it look either curvy or probably let it look perfectly round, like a circle or something. Yeah, so these are some of the CSS properties you can set border radius to. So for normal elements, if you add borders to elements, then you can set border radius. So here there's a normal border, then we have the border rounded border, which is not too curved, and they are all by virtue of this border radius. So the more you increase the border radius, the more curvier your borders look like. So let's add a simple border radius to this, which is 5px, very small. And then let's remove this restriction here. So we can have border width to be 5px. Yes. And then once you save this, you can see some small curve going on. But if you want it to really look really look clear, you can increase the value here to, let's say, 20. Let's increase to, let's say, 15 first. And now we see that there's some curves going on. So basically that's the use of rounded borders in CSS. You can use this on your element that you've applied borders to, or you can use them on border buttons. So buttons have edges, so you could always apply rounded corners to them. All right, so that will be it for borders in CSS. Now let's take these two because these are very important. Margins in CSS. Now you've heard about margins. I'm sure you've heard about margins, paddings, and all that, and you want to know how different they are from each other. So with this, we basically, when we say margin is basically the space separating an element from any outer element, the space outside of an element. So let's say in this case we have a div here and it has some info in it, right? Now if let's say you have another div, so div 1, div 2, let's come here, div 1, then div 2. Right, we have two separate divs here. Now you ask yourself, oh, these are very small. Let me increase the font size here. Size to, let's say 16px. This is the basic. Now for a div, you can give font size of 1.5 rem. We'll come to this rem and this ems and all that. I think we didn't give a good explanation the first time, right? So now we have these two elements here. Now if you say margin basically means that what's the spacing between this div 1 and this div 2, outer spacing. So margins are used to create spacing around elements outside of any defined border. So if there's a defined border on this div 1, what's the spacing after the border and the next available elements? That's basically margin. If we give any spacing, or if we are to provide a clear distinction between these two elements, you use margin to separate them. So let's give this a class div 1, and then we come here, class div 2. So now if you go into our CSS, we can have dot div 1, and then we can give it a margin of, let's say 2 rem. The rems and the em, please, does any of you have any issues with it? Let me go over it if that's an issue.
With what?
with the REM, the measurement unit. You know, we have PX and we have EM, we have REM.
I think it's only the PX I've been seeing.
You're okay with it?
I'm familiar with the PX, but the REM and the EM.
Okay,
You can just quickly go over it so that.
Yeah, let me quickly do that because it might be a lot of confusion here. So, and it's being used a lot, so you have to know 1.5. You have to know what it means. Yeah. So, when you talk of EM, when you talk of REM, the REM basically means root elements. So, and you know the root of HTML, any HTML file is the HTML element itself. So in CSS, if you probably define a font size for that HTML file, that will become the root element value, right? So let's say we have body here, but we have HTML on top. Hold on for a minute. Let me quickly attend to something, okay?
Okay, no problem.
Okay. Yeah, guys, I'm back. Sorry, I had to go do something. Okay.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah. So as I was explaining, the anytime you see REM is basically the font size of the root element, which is the HTML file. This is the root element of every HTML page. So if this guy has a default font size of, let's say, font size of 16px, that's the mostly that's the default font size of the HTML file of most web browsers. So if it has a font size of 16px and then you specify 1.5 REM anywhere in the code, it's basically telling you that multiply 1.5 by the root element, which is 16. So in actual sense, the font size of this div you are trying to use will become what? 1.5 times the 16px. So this will be the actual px value that will be computed. Computed is basically the value after multiplying or doing some computation. So this will be the actual px value for this root element. Do you understand?
Yes, I understand.
Yes. So anywhere you see REM, it's basically referring to the font size of the root element. And in this instance, the root element is the HTML element. If you don't explicitly set any font size, it will use the system default font size, which is mostly 16px. So every measurement in web or CSS at the end of the day gets rendered to pixels. That's the basic unit. If you don't want to use high pixel numbers, that's when sometimes you use this relative unit measurement, the REMs and the EMs and all that. But I don't know, they get computed to pixels. So that's the basic explanation you can ever get with REM. REM is what is the multiplication value for the font size of the root elements. We use font size a lot because that's what gives us the root element value. Then you can use it to multiply when you see REMs anywhere. So this margin 2 REM will basically means multiply 2 by 16. So you get, so instead of this, you can also do 32px. Now, if I don't want to write this 32px, that's when I use this 2 REM so that it gets computed for me, basically. So we can check the computed values when we go on the page. Now for EM, so if I want to do EM here, now for EMs is to respect to, it's in respect to the parent of this current element. So to div, we come here in the code base. This div2, what's the parent of this div2? It's body, right? So body, we go and check the font size of the body. Now body has a font size of 16 pixels. We can even decide to do this different. Let's say we give it 18 pixels. Yes. So if I do 2EM, I'm telling you that find out what's the font size of the parent of this element, and in this case the font size of the parent element, this guy is confusing me. The font size of the parent element, the parent element is body, because that's what's housing this particular guy, and the font size of this guy is 18. So hence 2EM 1.5 EM becomes what? 1.5 times the given font size, which is 18 pixels. So the computed value will probably be 30, I think 18 plus 18, that's 9. So 18, 9, that's some 20, 26, yeah, 27. So that's it with EMs and REMs. So anywhere you see REM, you just go to the root element. For REMs, it doesn't respect the parent of the immediate of the element you are dealing with. It only looks at the root element, which is the HTML root element here. And if you go to your own code base and you haven't applied any font size, then it will take the default font size that has been applied to the root element or the HTML elements as font size, and which is most of the time is 16 pixels. So once you get this 15 pixels, you multiply it with whatever value that has been assigned to the REM. That's all. So now going back, I think you have to wrap up very soon. Let's apply some borders here. 1px solid red, and then this will be border 1px solid blue. Yes. So there's a clear distinction between these two. So clearly, as you can see here, this div one has a margin of 2 REM, which is separating it from any outer element. So you can see that this margin is around the element, and the element here is bordered by a border. So anything inside the border is where the content goes to. That's why we have the div one inside there, and then right outside of it is the separation area, which is the margin. So anytime you set margin, you are basically trying to say that we want to separate the current element from any other external element that it might come in contact with, so that they don't merge or they don't intertwine or whatsoever. So that's it with it. So you can see that the margin separates this guy right from the div2, but then the div2 margin also enters the div1 margin. I don't know if you can see that. You can see that the two margins are intercepting, right? Hello?
I can see that.
Yes. So basically, it's separating the because the margin is just a separator. It won't separate itself from another margin. It would intercept other margins, but then it won't intercept the contents. won't intercept the contents of the elements you are trying to separate. So basically, that's how margins work. They separate one element external from the other. So that's it. And then with the RAM that we explained, so we said this was 2 REM, and then if you go to the computed, so if you if you if you click on the down part here, I think it's computed. So we can see that margin was computed to 32 pixels. So meaning that it took the font size of the root element, which was 16, and then it did the multiplication of 2 to it to get our margin for this. And now there's one important thing I think you need to know. Anytime you specify margin or padding and you don't bring the direction of where you are trying to apply them, it would apply to the entire element. But then you should know that behind the scene is applying some of the margin to, it's applying the margin to the top. So there's a top margin top, there's a margin bottom, there's a margin left, and there's a margin right. But then if you don't specify the directions, it will apply it to the entire element. So that's one thing you should know. So if you are in a hurry and you want to apply the margin around the whole thing, you just specify margin. But then we could have also done margin with hyphen top, and then we specify 2 REM. Then we come margin bottom. Then we specify 2 REM. Then we come margin left. Then we specify 2 REM. Watch carefully. Then we come margin right. We specify 2 REM. So now this guy is redundant because this is what it would have done. So meaning that if you specify this, then you should know what direction this guy is setting. So this guy, once you see just margin, the shorthand margin being applied, it basically means that apply these two to top, bottom, right, left, top, bottom, right, left. So if you see something like this, 2 REM space 2 REM. So here it's telling you that apply 2 REM to top, bottom first. So the first one is the X. The first one is the Y column. So the top, bottom. Let me make it a bit clearer. So 3 here and then 5 here. So if you see this, now this is a shorthand. Even though you have to type the values twice with just a space. It's basically saying that apply the margin 3 REM top, bottom first. That's what the first bit says. So apply margin top 3, apply margin bottom 3, and then space. Then you come to the next side, which is saying apply margin right 5, apply margin left 5. So top, bottom, right, left, top, bottom, right, left. That's what it means if you see them separated like this. But then if they are together, then it means it's only one and apply it to all the sides. But then if they are separated like this, it means the first one is for top and down, and then the second one is for left and right. Now what if there are 3? So I have 3, I have 5, and I have 1 REM. What does this say? So this also means that you apply, hold on, let's do this. So if it's 3, you come here. Sorry. You come here, then this 3, if you toggle it down, you see that the first 3 is applying to top, and the second one is applying to right, the third one is applying to bottom, and so it's always top, bottom, right, left. So this is top, bottom, top, bottom, right, left. Yeah, am I getting it correct? Yes. So here I did 3, 5, 1. So I applied the 3 to the top, and I applied the 5 to the right. I applied 1 to the bottom, and I applied the 5 to the left. So top, bottom, right, top, right. Let's get this straight. Top, right, bottom, right. So the 5 was repeated twice. Top, right, bottom right. So this can be very tricky. So usually what people do is that they do either the 2 or all the 4. All the 4 is very straightforward. You don't need any explanation on this because it's clearly spelled out, top, bottom, right, left. And then for the 2 it's very straightforward. So 2 is very straightforward. The only challenge is when you apply the 3. And then when you apply the 3, so let's do this 2. So for the 2, the first one is for top and down. So the first one is top 3, bottom 3, and then the second one is for left and right. So right 5, left 5. That's for the 2. But then if you apply 3, it goes for top, right, bottom first, and then it follows. Please, am I making any sense? Do you get it, or you are a bit confused?
I get it.
Okay. I think time is far gone, and we can wrap up here for today. We can continue it tomorrow, God willing, on Friday, so we can finish up the other bits. We had wanted to go into Bootstrap, but it looks like there's a lot to learn before we even get the concept of Bootstrap. Bootstrap basically gives you it's a CSS framework that makes your work very easy. You don't have to be writing CSS over and over and over for just a small piece of element you want to style. They have already styled components. So let's say a drop down. They have the heading section where you can import a nav bar and then make use of it. They have a very styled side menu where you can apply your links and then get a very nice sidebar. So we'll get into all the use case of Bootstrap, but then I think there are a few things we need to cover so that we know how things really work. What are some of the things you have to look out for and all that? Yeah. So so far, is there any questions on what you've done? Anything that I didn't really go over well per your understanding?
I think it's okay for my side. Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, good. All right, so then if that's the case, then I think we'll have to continue with it. It's almost 9:15. We can't keep you guys waiting. So thank you very, very much for today, and we hope to see you hopefully on Friday.
Thank you as well.
All right. Amankus, is there anything you want to add before we close up the call? Amankus. Okay, I think he's on mute. All right. So then, good night, and once again, see you hopefully Friday. All right. Bye.